Before we begin, just a quick note. The views and opinions shared by our guests on the Prison Pharmacy Connect show are entirely their own. We're simply providing a platform for open conversation, and nothing discussed should be taken as legal, medical, or professional advice. So Lee, I'll leave it to introduce yourself.
Lee, I'm an advocate for women in prison.
Amazing. And I'm Kaniksha, I'm the founder of Prison Pharmacy Connect. And the purpose of this podcast today is to find out from Lee about her experiences of being in prison, about her experiences of women's health in prison, medicines in prison, because that's not something that we hear so much about. So Lee, I just wanted to know, really, if you could tell us a little bit about your experiences. What was it like in terms of your health? What was it like before going into prison? Did it get any worse, any better in prison? If you could just give us a bit of a breakdown about that and whether you were even taking medicines or anything.
I actually wasn't taking any medication before prison. I didn't have a diagnosis for my mental health at that time, and that came once I was released. However, I was prescribed medication while I was in prison for my mental health. That was the first time I'd actually taken any medication ever.
How did that make you feel? Because when people take medicines for the first time, particularly when they're in an unknown environment and things are already so overwhelming, was there anyone to talk to you about your meds?
It was like it was invisible until you was in like a crisis. A lot of women go through a lot of pain with sickle cell. There was a lady, she was complaining, and until she collapsed in agony, and then they ended up having to do something about it. It's quite hard. And then people like menopause, for example, as well, that was another one that come up. There wasn't really much treatment and wasn't taken seriously.
So would you say, obviously you and I, we're both women, go through these hormonal changes and we know how it can affect our mood. What is that like in a prison environment when you're with other women in the same boat, but some people may not even have an understanding of themselves, have that self-awareness to know that it's hormones? Did you find that?
Us as women were good at, I'd say, just under 2 weeks a month. Me, in terms of my flow, I had a lot of challenges because I had quite a big flow, like my flow was quite heavy. And on top of the fact that I'm in there and I don't get to just shower when I want, it's very hard, very hard. And you've got women that don't actually have hygiene experience. Some women were never taught those things. So there's that to contend with as well.
Yeah. And that is quite hard. And it's making me also think, we've mentioned things like periods and even menopause, for example. But I've actually got a friend who's got endometriosis and she's not in prison. A couple of friends, actually. Did you ever see, or did you experience yourself, or did you ever see other women experiencing that? How is pain, for example, managed? Because obviously we are more susceptible to a lot of pain as well. And it's such a subjective thing. And people have different thresholds as well. And for women, I can understand it can be 10 times worse.
My pain was more related to my tooth and my menstrual cycle. I have quite bad menstruals, always wanted to have paracetamols. However, in HMP Bronzefield, you're only allowed to have, I think it's one pack a month, I believe, or 2 packs at maximum a month. At HMP, you're allowed to have unlimited, and you can get it prescribed by the GP and so forth. But managing, it's hard because, again, it's all very structured. You can't just ring the bell at 10 o'clock at night and get painkillers. It doesn't work like that. You have to wait until the morning. So I see a lot of people go through a lot of pain. And there's also limits to what medication they do provide. It's not the same as what's in the community. So a lot of women were getting, I think it was gabapentin for pain relief, I believe, and there was a few others. Other were quite strong medication. The prisoners needed them, but they wouldn't give them to them because of the fact that they were controlled drugs, basically. So that was quite hard when you've got a lot of women in there that have got a lot of high, pain, situations, and they can't get prescribed medication because they can't have it in cell. And then you've got situations where you've got prisoners that don't have 24-hour healthcare, which also causes problems. If someone's, especially the ladies that had sickle cells, or they would just get moved to a HMP prison, which don't have 24-hour healthcare, which means that you only have the prison pharmacist in the morning and in the evening to see, and that's it. As a GP, it can take like 3-4 weeks, and it's led to fatalities. People not being able to get the right medication, get the right care at the right time. I've seen it happen many times. No, that's as bad as it gets.
You said you've seen it happen many times. What sort of main problems have you seen occurring time and time again that you think this needs to be addressed? I mean, you did mention things like certain strong painkillers, which people are not able to have prescribed. And I can see it from the flip side, working in that setting, that it's not something you would probably give everyone straight away. But if they meet like the criteria and things, then there wouldn't be any reason not to give that individual the painkiller that they require. But we are also mindful that in some instances, not everyone, in some instances, there are drug-seeking behaviors, maybe because people prefer that as opposed to really looking at the root cause as well to certain things. I mean, I'm not sure what your views are on that, because I know that can be a bit tricky. I'm not saying that's the answer to everyone, but I think that does exist as well for some people.
Yeah, my only comment on that would be something that springs to mind while you was talking, is that there was a lady in there who came in to the prison after being on medication, I think maybe 14 years of her life on the same medication, and then was prescribed. So it's like the medication that she was using was now discontinued, and now there's a new tablet which she never had. Different dosage, different everything. Clearly it's going to have different effects. Has to be reviewed on that, and it was just prescribed, and because it was on her medical notes and whatever she had said to them at reception. And sometimes that's also detriment as well, what you tell them, because for some reason the information is not transferred from the community or back to the community.
Yes, we are finding that actually, that there is that break in transfer of care. I think it's also quite important that people are being given discharge summaries when they're being released. That is something we are doing. And I don't know if you're aware, but NHS England did roll out this new thing whereby even if someone has an unplanned release, they can actually collect their prescription from any community pharmacy. We have a duty of care to provide that. So that is quite recent actually, so that people won't be without their medicines. That's quite a positive thing to do. But I think some of the challenges that we see, and maybe you can even comment on this, is when people go to hospital and people in hospital not understanding the challenges that people face in prison and the care that is being received in prison, and then that transfer of care. I mean, did you ever have any experiences of going to hospital yourself, or did you know anyone that did?
I went to hospital. I ended up with constipation because I couldn't eat. When I first went to prison, I think this was in the first 3 months of being incarcerated, and up getting enemas, like 3 enemas. But I was chained to an officer. I had to sit in A&E. So I had a baby sitting in front of me, trying to play with the chain, aggressive. And it was an experience that I wouldn't. It was an unnecessary experience, if you ask me. For there is other ways that could be dealt with. Because if you're in pain and you're having to sit in A&E while you're chained to an officer, it's just not ideal. You're a woman as well. Sweet.
And you also mentioned that you weren't taking any medicines when you were outside of prison, but then when you came into prison, you were. What changed, if you don't mind me asking?
So my mental health was going through. I had a lot of loss. I opted to get one-to-one therapy while I was in there, and they prescribed me with sertraline, and for just practicing my behaviour at the time. So it was something that probably needed to help me. And then when I came back into the community, I wasn't on any medication, but then I told the doctors that I was prescribed sertraline in prison, and it was prescribed to me. I've always said that there was medications that were prescribed that never helped me, but it was reviewed. When I did complain about, my moods changing after it was prescribed the first time on my case, I was given a higher dose. I've been battling personally with medication for the last 4.5 years because of the effects, how it makes me feel. It's not doing what I need it to do. It's doing the opposite. It's not really helping. I don't feel like it's being reviewed. Sometimes someone will say that they have a pain, and I feel like in prison the go-to is gabapentin, or the go-to is, they have a go-to. It's not healthy. It doesn't help anyone, because I don't fix sertraline.
And how long were you on sertraline for in prison?
Let's see. From 2019 to 2020. So from June 2019 to November 2020.
And did you ever see a pharmacist not a pharmacy technician, because I think pharmacy technicians medicate on the wings, but did you know a pharmacist actually existed that you could ask them that, listen, my medicine, something doesn't feel right for me, can I speak with you? Or did you know how to go
personally
about
didn't.
it?
There was like a go-to person in the prison that you went to for anything medical. You went to them. If it was about collecting prescriptions, then you go to the desk, or you go to the hatch. But there was, if you asked them at the hatch, they couldn't answer. They couldn't, like those kind of things that you're saying. Like people would ask, even with the lady I was supporting. I remember going to the hatch, now I think about it, and asking them about not giving her that dosage, and they're like, we can't do that. We can only prescribe her what's been written.
It's just making me feel that maybe people don't know that pharmacist exists in prison and they can speak to them. That's been my experience anyways. I've come across people that have said, oh, miss, I need to speak to the doctor about my meds. And I'm thinking, well, hang on a second, like, what's going on? Speak to me. I'm a pharmacist. Let me see what I can do to help you. And they just think, well, I didn't actually know I could speak to
Where
anyone
are you based?
besides a doctor. And
where in the prison are you? Because I'm trying to visualize. Are you the ones that come at night and administer the meds at night? Because what colour do you wear? I don't.
Okay, fine. So just to give a bit of a background, so I am based in healthcare, and I make myself a bit more visible and present by coming out of my office, just saying hello to people, going to see my colleagues if they're okay, making sure that people can see me through the hatch as well, that I'm available. My colleagues will always say to me, Kanisha, this guy's come to the hatch. He's saying this about his medicines. Can you come and speak to him quickly? And I will. I just think there's no point in me sitting in my office. Let me get out, go and speak to them. Let's get that problem sorted. Because then if I make that entry in their notes, then I can just say to the doctor, look, this is what I've done. Can we now take it further, sort of thing, as opposed to the person then waiting for a GP appointment for 4 weeks' time, delaying everything. I don't see the point in that. And that's what I've always been like, even when my colleagues have been medicating at the hatches in a much larger prison. I think it's much easier. And then people also know that, there's a pharmacist available. I can speak to them. And some pharmacists also run clinics. And I don't know if you're aware of that as well, but they do run clinics, and there is an opportunity for people to actually ask
I'm now
to speak to
thinking
them.
about, here's the thing. I went to 5 different prisons within my 3-year sentence. So it's very different in every single prison. And in
It is.
Brunsfield, which is a remand prison, I believe the pharmacist is present on each wing. Maybe. Because I remember there being someone else attached to healthcare that had an office round the side of where healthcare the hatch was. And they'd always liaise, especially when it comes to methadone. People would always be going to that room on house block 1. I feel like the pharmacist in Brunsfield was based on house block 1 because that was the medication wing. So if you came in and you was on any type of drugs or anything, you would go to that wing. But other prisons, no, I didn't know they existed, I'll be honest.
Obviously, that means that we probably need to put ourselves out there a bit more so people are aware that they can speak with us. And what was your experience like? You said you didn't have a medication review at all whilst you were in prison with a pharmacist anyways. Did you have it with a GP?
I didn't have a conversation with the GP like how I would in the community.
Was there much like counselling?
Yeah, because
about...
there was so everything was around the NHS Mental Health Trust.
Yeah.
In Brunsfield, that is.
And what was your care like when you were released? I mean, for some people, medicines or health isn't really the first thing on their mind. But what was it like for you? Because you were taking medicines. I mean, did you know what to do when you were released? Did you get the care you needed?
Not really, no. I think also because I came out just after the pandemic, so it was like 2021. Quite a lot of constraints, obviously. So I didn't physically see a doctor for about a year. I was prescribed twice where the dose was increased. I'd have a review. I was just explaining to the doctor about the symptoms I was having and the fact that I just didn't feel like the medication was working for me. I've seen a lot of people, again, sometimes their medication has not been transferred correctly. bearing in mind that you can't present at a GP without an address. So when people are getting released, this happens within like the first 3 days. So someone gets released, their medication gets mistransferred somehow, and then their only option is to try and register with a GP. They don't have any fixed abode, so and then it becomes a problem. And then there's been problems where people have ended up back in hospital, can't get their insulin. There's been a few situations different for people. Methadone has been a big one.
I've worked in community pharmacy, and I've actually seen prescriptions from people whereby there is no address. It does actually say no fixed abode, and they are able to get the medicines that they need. I think people are aware of that more so now than what they were, say, a few years ago. Because otherwise,
I was going to say, sometimes these people are quite vulnerable on release as well. There's so much to do.
100%.
Quite draining physically, mentally, emotionally. It's like, what do you prioritize? Because you have to go to probation. You have to sort out your medication. You have to sort out family, or if you've got children. Or there's so many responsibilities. Your finances, you have to make sure you sort out your universal credit on the day of release. You have to sort out your housing. Sometimes it's having the capacity. So I feel like before even release, when someone's getting released 99% of the time. There can be some type of contingency for people that go to court and get released on the same day, because even them, they need a start. Even if it takes an hour, an extra hour out of your release time, they need to sort that, because once they get out that gate with the £46, got to go to probation, get to here, get to there, and get their medication. How do you know they can physically do that? What if they're in pain? They can't just go into a pharmacy and ask for medication, can they? They can't do that.
No. But now in that situation, with the new service that's rolled out, hopefully that should be one less burden, as it were, on people's minds, because they don't need to think, how am I going to get my meds? The way it would work is that there is like an electronic prescription that would be available for any community pharmacy to pick up. The only thing the person needs to do is just go into the pharmacy, give their name, and let them know that they've been released from prison.
Like within the last 12 weeks of release, even if they could get a pack from the healthcare to say, look, this is what it is, get a card stamped or QR coded for the pharmacy to say that this is a one-time only first prescription type of thing, that would be amazing. Do you know what I mean? Because anything would help. Everybody has to be involved, or else it won't work.
There is a departure lounge in this particular prison to support people as they're being released. And at one point I mentioned, because they were talking about medicines and health, and I said, have you ever considered referring people to the NHS app when they're being released? Because on the NHS app, sometimes people don't know where they're going to be staying. But if you wanted to find a pharmacy, you go onto the NHS app, you pop your postcode wherever you are. You can find a local GP surgery, you can find a local dentist, you can find local services, but just on the app. And I don't think people are aware of that is how useful the app is. And I think it's about making that available.
It sounds amazing.
Released,
however,
so that
the reality is that it sounds so simple. And it really isn't that simple. It really isn't. Understanding how to navigate these things it's quite overwhelming when you've spent a certain amount of time in prison away from all of this new technology. That's the first thing. And then you've also got the assumption that people get released and then just have access to a smartphone. I have a lot of people right now that I support that are struggling. I'm struggling to get information and documents to housing and stuff because they don't have access to an email account address. They don't even have an email account. They don't have a smartphone.
I've questioned that about a smartphone, and someone said to me that probation can provide one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay.
Probation are not magicians. Probation. I'll just back up probation here. Probation are not magicians. They cannot magic houses out of nowhere. They cannot magic phone and can't know. They can't do that. I actually try and support prison leavers to build their credit so they can manage finances and manage bills. It's not about staying away from them. It's about learning how to manage them. Get a contract phone, which enables you to do these things with support. You can't just leave them out in the windowless with a smartphone. It's not healthy. It gets overwhelming within the brain. When it comes to prison leavers, it's like meet them where they're at, which is on paper, which is quite boring, but it's old school and it's what we understand as prison leavers. That's what we're just leaving. So it's about baby steps, one day at a time with the reintegration. The bombarding didn't help me, and it hasn't helped any of the people that I've spoken to about coming home and just being on the phone and being expected to just, oh yeah, just go and email this, or go on this site and do this. And it's just like, it sounds great, but it's not as simple. It's about going back to basics. It's like learning to walk again. So anyone that's coming out of prison within the last 5-10 years is getting a shock in technology. It's nothing like what we understand. I try to let people be aware of how vulnerable people actually are in terms of doing simple things everyone else takes for granted, to be fair.
I have also thought, the basic things of, let's just say your phone, you've put it away, you're in jail, you come out of jail, you've got access to a phone, okay, you don't have a charger. Even something as basic as that. And then I think, okay, well, you don't have enough money. These are the things that you'll be looking at, right? Okay, I'm hungry, I'm going to need to eat, I need to find a place to stay. So, if you look at all these things categorically, I mean, to me, medicines falls almost to the bottom of the list.
Because if it's eliminated in the start, then it's the tone for everything, because it's the biggest worry. And I've seen people almost become homeless who try and move into a new property and all they need is their meds. And they're like, I need to get my meds, because they've had to change it from one pharmacy to another. And the priority is the housing and stuff, but it is the meds, because the meds is the worry, should I say. The housing is the priority, but the meds is the worry, because if you don't get the prescription, then you can't sleep tonight, you can't this, you can't.
I was just thinking, well, what's the barrier then for people not being able to get meds? I don't quite know how to say this, but if it's quite a small thing, like medicines is quite small, let's just say, compared to sorting out your housing, family and things, what is the barrier then for people addressing that first?
It's the reality of whatever situation they're going through individually, whatever pain threshold they have. So whatever pain they have may stop them from leaving their house, capacity of using a phone, being able to communicate. There's so much different things that contribute that just puts it at the back burner. And because it's a thing where they know that they have to get it at some point. Like, I've had someone that's got nothing to do with prison. However, they're epileptic. They know they're epileptic. They're fully aware of their situation. And they waited and they run out of medication. And they know that if they don't take that meds like by the next day, literally they know what's going to happen. I didn't realize that until it happened. And I was just like, you can never do that again. Like, you can never ever do that, and just lucky that they was able to get the prescription the following day. But it's just like, because there was so much other stuff going on, it's like, oh, I forgot. And it's like, but how do you forget? But I see how you forget. But I don't know, like, having more medication than you need, maybe that's the thing, because having 2 weeks of medication on release is something that I've seen also. It's not all bad. Some people do get 2 weeks worth of medication when they're coming out. But again, then what? When I don't have a fixed event.
Yeah, we're actually meant to be given 28 days now as well. Yeah, I think we're meant to be. Obviously, you do look at it on a case-by-case basis as well, because sometimes people don't take their medicines at all in prison. And for whatever reasons, we go and do welfare checks. We ask them, what's going on? Why aren't you taking your medicines? Some people just outright refuse. But then, if it's a critical medication, we can't just stop it. We will carry on prescribing it. But then when they're being released, you also question, well, is 28 days really suitable
I understand
for them
that.
As well then?
Sometimes the time that medication is given as well. People that was getting tired at like 9-10 o'clock at night. And then...
Yeah. I mean, that's not too bad, considering in some places they might get them at 5 p.m.
Maybe I'm confused about the meds, but there was meds at different times. There was meds sometimes after dinner, and that would girls up all night. And then they have meds again in the morning.
Okay.
Yeah, the timings used to. So I just feel like when you've got people that are on certain medications, they shouldn't be in prison. They literally should not be in there. There should be an alternative provision for them, because it's a lot to manage in a prison.
Yeah, they don't have that skill set to support people
as
in
a
that
whole,
environment.
no. As a whole, prison officers, all workers, all roles, no. And the trauma informed only got into when I went to prison in 2018.
Yeah, that is quite a relatively new thing, and it's growing awareness as well, because in prison, a lot of people have got trauma which they haven't been able to address. Some people's lives have constantly been on the go. It's just pretty much a fight for survival. And when they come into prison, everything just slows down and everything's catching up with them. And that's where the mental health tends to become more apparent. They probably always had it, but it's just more apparent. And it's just, that in itself is quite overwhelming and enough to scare people, and can cause a lot of different reactions in people as well. And that's where all the medicines come in. Yeah, I think I've definitely learned quite a lot of that. Prison is not really the right place to be addressing trauma in particular. People need deep therapy, and they need it to be consistent as well. And medicines isn't always the answer to that. It might help, but it's not always the answer.
Food contributes, the level of diet comparison to the level of medication that's given. It's not a good combination in a prison. It's not.
What was the diet sort of in prison like?
It was just straight carby. And if you was a vegetarian, it was just like falafel.
You mentioned that you had constipation.
Yeah, so I ate chips for the first few weeks, and that's what it was. I wouldn't eat anything other than potatoes. I couldn't eat. The things that are available on the pod in Bronzefield are not the things that are available within the HMP prisons. It's quite limited. And now I think about it, it is literally a pod full of sugar, like Quavers, Wotsits, Bounty, Snickers, like pot noodles. There was nothing really nutritious. The HMP prisons, you can actually order fruit and veg, and it can be well managed. But in that place, it's just a bit wild. What is actually how they actually manage that with so much medication in that place. I feel like anybody can get medication. Like, it doesn't take much to actually get hold of medication, and once you get it, I've seen people manipulate the pharmaceutical industry in terms of they know everything about the medication they're on and what it does and what they need. They're telling the pharmacist or whoever it is what it is that they need. Definitely overprescribed.
I remember there was a man who I met who'd been in jail for about 20 years, and he says to me, a lot of people don't actually need to be on medicines. They don't need it, but they just choose it for a variety of reasons. I think one of the things that I tend to see as well is inhalers.
I got it.
Oh, did you?
I felt like I did actually start to form asthma. I couldn't breathe in that prison, but also because of the benefits. I'll be very honest, there was the benefits you could get, i.e. just having a pillow that fluffed, or just to have a duvet that kept you warm at night, and to have a pillow that actually fluffed, like to have access to be able to buy a pillow on the canteen myself. You'd have to be medically cleared. So I got security transferred, and I'd been prescribed my asthma pump. And when they transferred me, I was like, where's my pump? I need my asthma pump, because they was willing to transfer me on a 3-hour drive without my asthma pump.
These are some challenges that we face, and I just question, do we give it? Do we not give it?
It is a hard one, but it's also a conversation. The pharmacists, the GPs, when people are coming and complaining, it's a conversation to now take it back to the officers in the prison and the governor and ask, what is the basic allowance? But then when I went back to another prison and I had my pillow and stuff, there's like, you can't have it. I said, well, I've got an inhaler. And then I used it and said, well, I've got an inhaler. Just so I could have a pillow.
Yeah. When you say it like that, it does sound quite ridiculous that you're having to fight and have to use medication as a way of getting what you need. Basic.
So a medical care pack, as much as they have an induction pack when you go into prison, or you go to any prison once you're transferred, and you get like a little pack, you get a bag, laundry bag with a plate, a cup. It would be good to have one from the pharmacy that is approved by the pharmacy, whether that be a pillow and a duvet like everybody's prescribed one. They've got enough money to do that, because this is people's health. People are in there like getting sick of pneumonia and sepsis and this, because of the conditions. There's as much more here as there is in the communities that are unaliving people outside. Fentanyl is a big problem in the women's prisons at the moment, from what I'm hearing and the research I've been doing and the conversations I've been having. Fentanyl, I don't know what it is. I don't know where they get it from, but people are losing their life in there, overdosing on fentanyl. So I understand.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
That's why,
it's very dangerous.
For me personally, if the prison and the community were to link and understand what medications were prescribed and wasn't prescribed before someone entered the prison, I don't think anyone should be prescribed any medication while they're in prison and it's not been given to them prior. I don't think it works, because that's where the manipulation starts. Oh, well, can I have I've got a lady that you would love to speak to. She, the opposite of me, she's been in that system for 20 odd years. She's she's been on every other medication. And she said to me the other day, she said, Lee, all you need is gym. She said, I won't prescribe you anything. Because I said to her, oh, my doctor prescribed me another medication. And she was like, I wouldn't prescribe you anything. You just need the gym. And I just thought, coming from someone that has done so much time in prison, been on so much medication for so many different things, to tell me that medication isn't really the answer for everything. We've got these long queues every day of people just waiting for medication, depending on this medication now, because that's what's getting them through their sentence as well. Yeah.
On the flip side, though, from what I've seen as well, I would say some people don't know how to help themselves, like the basics. For example, I've come across people where they say, I've got mouth ulcers, and I'm thinking, all right, well, they're not going to get a dentist appointment just yet. So I think, well, what can they do in the meantime? So I say to them, have you tried doing saltwater gargles? And some people are thinking, oh, I didn't know I could do that. How do I do it? And then you're explaining to them how they can help themselves. And if they don't even know that, then you can understand why they think, oh, I've got this pain, I need to go to see the doctor, or I've got this, I've got to see the doctor, any small thing. And I think from the perspective of people in prison as well, is they don't have control over anything. And there's ample time on their hands as well. So if they're in pain, that is also intensified. It's going to linger there. So they're going to think, I need to get this sorted because it's not letting me think. Whereas if they were on the outside, they probably wouldn't feel that intensity of pain. So I think it's from both sides. I think sometimes from healthcare, we probably feel that, okay, someone's coming to us for something, we should help them. But maybe it's also about educating people first, and that individual also taking accountability. Do you know what? Let me go and try this first.
No.
That's just my perspective, because I've seen both sides. And I think depending on where you've grown up as well, who your family are, who your friends have been, your associates, that makes a big difference.
All prisons need
as well. Because if you're... No.
They do. I feel like listening to you, it's like, this is the type of training that's needed within the prisons. And, for both sides to be able to understand and work together, because it is literally that simple.
Well, thanks, Lee. It's been great speaking to you. Was there anything else that you wanted to maybe highlight that you haven't said already, that you think we can do better to support people when it comes to medicines? You've mentioned, having a pack or something for them when they come into prison, when they're being released. I also agree that we need to put ourselves out there a bit more so that people know that if they can't get a GP appointment, they can speak to a pharmacist or a member of the pharmacy team.
Like, this Prison Pharmacy Connect is amazing. I've got people that would love to have a conversation with you, give you different insights, because everybody's experience is different, and it will give you a scope of how things have maybe changed over time. And I think this is an amazing space. A pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.